hope everybody's doing well on Halloween. I'm not sure if it's Halloween for you right now. I hope it is because I plan to drop this video today on Friday. But it may not happen until Saturday. So, again, happy Halloween to all of you. We're almost to the end of this year, 2025. In tonight's video, I'm going to be talking a little bit about what I talked about last time, just to prepare for my cruise that's coming up, my retirement retreat cruise where I talk about my 5-year plan. I need some practice in talking through it to build my case to my accountability partner. So join me tonight and relax as I whisper and provide tricks or triggers in tonight's episode. It's almost the end of the year. Like I said last time, I'm looking forward to recapping the year for you a little bit later from a financial perspective and also maybe from a personal perspective as well, as far as things that have been going on and maybe what I plan for the future. And all of you should be preparing for 2026 as well, like right now, thinking about your budgets, your spreadsheets, how you can get to where you want to be in the next year. You know, they're saying that the financial markets are still going to be amazing in 2026. Nobody has a crystal ball, but I'm thinking that they are probably correct, that next year will be a really great year. So, the other thing I wanted to mention is I signed up for YouTube Lite. I think it's called YouTube Premium Lite, where I no longer watch ads on my videos. So when I'm watching ASMR, other channels that I enjoy, I no longer have to watch ads, so it's only like $10 or $11 a month. You may want to consider doing that if you feel like it is worth it. Because as I look at my notes, one thing I wanted to share with you is that I have quite a few miscellaneous items for 2026. Things like in your budget where you don't want to maybe create an entire line item for. Are you guys like me where you may not, again, want to create a line item for because it's a small expense, but you may have multiple small expenses. Like, for example, I have my air conditioning maintenance. It's like $15 a month where they come out and they look at the system and make sure that it's working properly. My LA Fitness gym membership, which is $43 a month. My LA Fitness annual fee. I don't want to create a line item for an annual fee. The Paramount app. Did I tell you guys that I paid, I think it's $130 a year. So on Paramount, I can watch shows and not watch ads, right? I think that's important. We have to prioritize things. And because I don't have cable and I don't pay for internet either, I find that it's worth it for me to pay that money to enjoy streaming through the app. I mentioned YouTube Premium Lite, and also Amazon Prime. So as I'm creating my budget for 2026, I'm going to create one line item. Remember, you've got your rows, and then you have the columns. And so I'm just going to put the total dollar amount for the year in that column, whether it's a one-time payment 0% credit card or money that goes out the door. So these are things I am working on, and you should be as well, while you're putting together your budget for the next year. The other thing I decided to write on a piece of paper here is pay off order 2026 for 0% credit cards that I have. If you've been with my channel for a little while now, you know that over the past 2 years, 2023, 2024, and now 2025, I had 0% credit cards where I was putting money on them and then letting it sit in my savings account earning, 3 or 4% interest at one time. That's a very smart thing if you can do it. Some of you may not have the willpower with credit cards, and for you I would say don't worry about it, right? If you're going to go use that card for other things, then your critical expenses and fund that you've allocated for fund, then I would say don't do it. But in my mind I was getting confused over what other big ticket items do I have in 2026, which is actually money that I have in my Ally online savings account already earmarked in a bucket for paying off. I call it PIF, pay in full. And I have several things. My Discover card, April 10th, I will pay it in full. So halfway through 2025, in July is when I started the 0% Discover card, and I was putting my expenses there. I'm not going to go over the balances of what they are. It's something like $8,000. Number 2, I have to do my taxes by April 15th. And because I'm not getting a tax return, there's no sense in doing it early. So I have about $800 set aside for my taxes. Oh boy, because, this first year in retirement, I told Marketplace for healthcare that I was going to make about $16,000. Not true. It turned out to be $41,000 because remember I had things like my mom's annuity when she passed away. I decided to sell shares from that taxable account, which counts as income for the portion that is the gain. I've learned so much this year about early retirement. So I will have to, you may recall in another episode, I went to taxact.com and I opened up another 2024 just for fun, and I plugged in the numbers to role play everything I had going on for income and the subsidies I was getting for the Affordable Care Act. And so I think I'll have to pay about $800 in taxes, so stay tuned, I'll share that with you next year. But it looks like I'll probably have to pay about $800, so April 15th. My Wells Fargo credit card, remember, for the first part of 2025, I was putting all of my critical expenses and things and fun and other on a Wells Fargo 0% credit card. That is not due until July 7th. July 7th. July 7th. July 7th. I have a Bank of America Royal Caribbean credit card. I'm going crazy with these credit cards, by the way, that I just got recently. That's not due until October of 2026. So the rest of 2025 is spending I'm putting on that card. But I also have a note here that, actually I'm recording this on Friday, but tomorrow, Saturday, November 1st, I'm going to Marketplace and I'm going to see what my monthly payment will be for healthcare. I'll probably stay with Blue Cross Blue Shield. It's a bronze program. And I anticipate the enhancements will be in place, which means it'll probably be $200 a month. But once Congress makes their decision, hopefully by the end of the year, well, they'll have to do it by the end of the year, that may jump to up to $500 or $600 a month. I know, crazy. I'm not super happy about that, but it is what it is. So I may put those payments on the 0% credit card rather than cash flowing it out of my savings account, money that I've, earmarked for 2026. So that may be something I'll do, but that's due October 11th. And then finally, most of my expenses for 2026 will be on my Fidelity Visa card. Remember I told you that recently that I applied for a Visa credit card through Fidelity, which I've got a lot of money with Fidelity, almost $1 million. So when they checked how much I had, even though I've got zero income, well, no, I told them I'd have, I can't remember, 30,000 or 40,000 of income. But I'm not really doing that. I'm actually spending short-term reserves. But anyway, and I told them I had a 0% rent or mortgage payment, which is true. Not 0%, did I say 0%? I mean 0. And so anyway, they gave me a card with a credit line of $26,000, so the majority of my spending will be on that card, so all 0%, and then I'll pay it off in March of 2027. So anyway, I wanted to create a piece of paper that reminds me of what I have coming up in 2026. But moving on, remember I said I'm going on the cruise in a couple days, and so I will be talking to my accountability partner named Michael on this retirement retreat cruise, and so I'm going to practice how I'm going to tell him this to see if he agrees with my thought process. So on this piece of paper, I put down my 5-year big pick of income, and it says also not touching investments. On the flip side of the paper are my investments, but this is where it gets interesting because I'm deciding to spend from my taxable account, remember? So I am using some investments, but I'm moving into short-term reserves pretty quickly. In fact, I will sell probably $80,000 of shares in January of 2026 and January of 2027, which is really just a 1 year. Does that make sense? Because I'm trying to capture as much of the gains as I can. And remember, I'm going to put it into CDs, U.S. Treasuries, or I-bonds. So, in terms of my short-term reserves, I've got $185,000 in CDs. My taxable account currently is $186,000. It was much more, but remember I moved $40,000 from it in July of 2025, and that's part of the 185 number from above. So 186 to go. So really, if I sell 80 in January of this year, or 2026 and 2027, because I have to keep the number down, because part of that will be counted as income, and I want to get 0%, because when you sell shares from a taxable account, it's not counted as ordinary income, it's counted as, or it goes against capital gains. So, but on paper, I'm going to tell him short-term reserves 185, taxable account 186. But you know what, guys? I'm actually now thinking I'm going to take Social Security at 62, whereas in the last video I said I may delay it. I know, I keep going back and forth. But that's what's nice about, thinking about things in advance, is that you can change your mind. But right now, it's so negligible to delay Social Security when you look at how much you're going to have at the end, and then how much, the break-even point is like when I'm 80 years old. So I want to solve for cash flow. I want to bump that up, so I put down Social Security 75,000, which is age 62, 63, and 64, which gives me 446,000 in that bucket. Are you with me? 446. So hold on to that number. Because Social Security will subsidize my spending need, which acts kind of like as a pension that preserves my short-term reserves longer, so that if the market does go down and we go into a stock market decline, I have more money as a buffer to get through those years. So that's my strategy. So 446, and now let's look at the spending for 5 years, 2026 through 2030. Well, do you remember? I'm going to take $50,000 right off the top. Right off the top. Because if I have to pay more for my healthcare premiums during these years, I want to set that money aside. So there it goes. Set aside 50 grand. And then I'm giving myself a big fat raise. Why? Because we deserve it. If you work really, really, really hard when you're younger, if you're 40 right now or 45, or maybe if you're in your 30s, and you save up a nest egg, that engine that's really large, then don't be such a cheapskate like me, right? You don't want to do that. You want to feel confident spending down your money. So I am bumping up my spending for these 5 years to $50,000. Remember, 2025 was $36,000. So I'm going to spend an additional $14,000 a year. And in 2025, I went on 3 cruises. I went to Ohio and did an Airbnb for 3 weeks. I went to Washington, D.C. for a long weekend, and I went to Texas for my nephew's wedding. So every other month I was doing something, right? Well, I can increase my spending by an additional $14,000. That's really huge. Super huge. So my critical expenses will be 20. My discretionary spending for fun and other is 30, which equals 50. And I say 20 for critical because that is not including, remember, the healthcare premiums, whether that be $2,500 a year or whether that be $6,000 or $7,000 a year. That money is going to come out of the money I earmarked that I told you about just a minute ago. So just like I did last time, remember 50,000 times 5 was the 250 plus the 50 is 300. So 300,000 from the 446 that I talked about just a minute ago leaves about $146,000 of open to buy. What if I have to spend more than 50? Then I can do that, right? I can pull from those monies that are set aside for spending. So what does this mean then for the money that I have sitting in investments? So this is very similar to Coast Fire. When you're building your wealth, if you guys are in your 30s right now, or you're 40 and you're putting a lot of money into your investments, and you're young, and you put that money there and you get it to 500,000 or 600,000 or 700,000 or whatever that number is, even if you don't put any more money into it because you've got time on your side, that money is just going to exponentially go higher and higher and higher by you doing nothing but letting it sit there, whether or not you are putting money into it or not. But the reality is you're going to continue to put money into it, right? You're not just going to stop. So this is the same concept. I have 1,285,000 in investments. Let me read those off for you right now that I'm recording this at the end of October. In 2025, my traditional IRA is 711,000. That's 711,000. My Roth IRA number 1 with Vanguard is 222,000. My Roth IRA number 2 with Fidelity is 261,000. My health savings account, which is in all stocks, is $68,000. Now I may move that to bonds, but there's no need because I'm cash flowing my own health care above and beyond the premiums that I told you about. So if I have to go to the doctor, which I did twice in 2025, I just paid out of my normal cash. I didn't even use my health savings account. I want to keep that invested as long as possible. And my I-bond, which is $22,000. Remember, I told you before that I now consider that I-bond not cash and reserves, but investments. So that number is $1,285,000. If I just let that sit for 5 more years at a conservative rate of return annually of 4.5%, it grows to about $1,627,000. You can go to dinkytown.net and look at any savings calculators and figure this kind of stuff out, right? Just start to dream big about your money, like what can you possibly get to in the next year or so. So that means that money goes from 1.3 approximately to 1.6, which is a $300,000 differential, right? Would you agree? Even if the market goes down a little bit, the average is 4.5%, very, very conservative for a 5-year time frame. And I happen to believe that in that 5 years, we are going to see the markets go down quite a bit. That is why I'm not only going to let the money just sit there and not sell it, but I'm also going to level it out and have it become more conservative. So maybe next year or the following year, I'm going to, move it from, remember, it was some of the accounts, for example, the traditional IRA was heavily weighted in stocks, right? So I'm going to be mindful of moving that to more of a 50-50 blend of stocks and bonds. So when you think about $600,000 of growth, $300,000 of growth in that 5-year time frame, what's 300 divided by 5? $60,000 on average that it goes up. So remember when I said if you retire, you're still kind of earning income because even though you quit your job, your money's still working for you. That engine that you've created is still working for you year after year after year. Now, in these 5 years, remember, I'm not withdrawing from that bucket. But do you see how this now shows you on paper that my money that I've created in that engine is sitting there and it's growing for me at approximately 60 per year? Well, how much did I tell you I'm spending per year? About 50, right? Even though some of that is Social Security, but it's almost like you're living for free. That's how you have to think about. That's the motivation for me to build wealth, is that the money continues to grow. And if you look at 60 minus 50, you still have like 10,000 on paper that you're still growing, if that makes sense. It is an abundance mindset rather than a scarcity mindset, not only from a spending perspective, but watching your money grow when you're still building the wealth and when you get to retirement as well. So then, if we then flash forward to 5 years into the future, when I start withdrawing from the 1.6 million, that would generate at 4% as a withdrawal rate about $64,000 per year, plus my Social Security of $25,000 would give you about $9,000 in spending per year. So I want to end this episode by going back to my Suze Orman episode in 2012. One of the last things she told me was, she said, you're going to get to about 1.6 million. Now, I got there much earlier than she said. And I remember her saying that the 1.66 million would generate about 80,000 of income, including Social Security. Well, that's what she meant. So when I look at these numbers, that's exactly what happened. Now, did I get there faster than she said? I did. Because I was putting in more into my investments and I included catch-up contributions, whereas her calculations did not calculate catch-up contributions. And we just happened to go through one of the biggest bull markets in history, right? I was watching the Choose 5 podcast the other day, and this guy, Brian, I forget his last name, he was on the episode, and he said that, over the past 3 years, we have had double-digit growth in the S&P 500. Double-digit. And even before that, we had really good years. 2019, 2020, 21, 2022, it went down a little bit. But we have still experienced in our lifetimes of building wealth incredible gains in the stock market. So I'm going to leave you with this. Wherever you are in your investing journey, remember things like this. Listen to other people. Figure out what they're doing with money. Again, whether you're building it or you're going into early retirement, you don't have to do exactly what I did, but it gives you an example of something that you could do. And so, as I live my life and I'm starting to spend from those monies, I can be rest assured that if the market goes down, I should be fine. My money may go down, but it's going to come back up. And at the same time, I'm going to level it out to capture some of those gains and put it into income-producing assets like bonds. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and close out this episode. Happy Halloween, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of ASMR Money Mentor. ASMR Money Mentor. I'm Evan Thomas, your host, and I will see